everyone, and welcome back to the Leading in a Crisis podcast. On our episode today, we're continuing our conversation with District Chief Craig Covey of the Orange County Fire Authority. Chief Covey is a 32-year veteran of Orange County Fire Authority, has a lot of experience working as an incident commander and working with public information officers on incidents of varying sizes. So we get lots of great feedback from the chief on his experiences and on working with PIOs and giving some advice for them to be better. Let's join that conversation again now. Let's talk a little bit about the politics of crisis management, Chief. Typically when a big IMT sets up, you've got a liaison officer function there who's engaging with other agencies, maybe with the elected officials. So often we see with these large scale incidents, elected officials want to be involved. They want visibility. As long as they're happy, that can go well. How was it working this recent GKN incident now where we had 50,000 people evacuated? You had elected officials at all levels who were engaging around this. Tell us a little bit about, how you were able to engage with them, or did you delegate that out? How did that work for you?
No, the elected officials got me. They deserve that by their position. Some of them I was doing individually, some of them we were doing as groups. It was, to say it was massive would not be an understatement or an overstatement. It may be an understatement. It was also election season too, on top of everything else. So there was an incredible attention from them. We impacted 6 communities, and it did go all the way to, Congress, local, state, and national elected officials there. It was an incredible challenge. One of the big challenges with it, they wanted to be the ones to tell their communities what was going on. And sometimes those messaging they were putting out wasn't ready to be released by the incident, or wasn't as accurate as it should have been or could have been, which caused confusions and stuff, and trying to get them to understand that responsibility in communicating out. And anything the incident puts out is officially approved and releasable. When you're going out on your own, you may not be saying it exactly right, and you may be causing confusion. The whole goal is a joint, unified informational pipeline, but we did have numerous instances of stuff outside that pipeline that caused confusions and unnecessary frictions that it is the nature of the beast. And we use those cooperator meetings to have those conversations, somewhat frank and, hey, please help us help you kind of thing, and make sure you're not putting anything out the incident's not ready to put out, or if you are, it's accurate to it. Was a huge lift in this. But I did have some really incredible senior leadership that came in at both local, state, and national level. And they were asking every one of them, what can we do? How can we help? And I tasked them with, hey, would you be willing to emphasize getting a emergency declaration done to this area? This area is incredibly impacted both at the city and at the residential level, and they can't afford it. A lot of people are struggling. They had that done at the state level within 8 hours, and by the next morning or mid-afternoon, like within 20 hours, done at the federal level through President Trump. So there is some things you can use that are incredibly useful with the power of those elected officials, the resources that they can bring to bear. And my emphasis on that not only was finding relief to the cities and the residents, but it also opened checkbooks to me and access to resources. Should this thing fail and go catastrophic, I could pull from the state resources or national resources without having to run through that process at that time. Mm-hmm. Those doors were open. The checkbook was ready. The people were in position and monitoring. All I had to do was say, send it. And so there is positive to having those electeds around. And when you give them something like that they were passionate about, and they fixed immediately. From an incident commander's perspective, that was awesome to have in my hip pocket and available to me.
That's an excellent point there, Chief, because so often, we get a little cynical, a little jaded at how some of the politicians engage in these incidents, and it feels more like grandstanding for themselves rather than serving the community. But it's a terrific point about navigating the federal emergency declaration process or just emergency resources and tacking those elected officials to help you do that. A terrific point you made up there to leverage those. But every incident we see uh, examples where politicians go off script or they want to break the news, and so you'll give them. I've been on incidents before where we have done a briefing for elected officials at 10 in the morning, and then we're doing a press conference at noon. By the time we had the press conference going, some of those elected officials had already broken the news that we were going to deliver in the press conference. And as you said, sometimes accurately, sometimes not so accurately. So I guess that problem's not going away anytime soon, right? So um, any
Well,
other,
I
yeah,
think to your point, that 10 o'clock meeting is that moment to, once I realized what was going on, to have that, better, politically correct, but frank conversation of, hey, help us make sure that we're getting the right information out. It's accurate and timely. And don't push us in a direction that it's not clear and ready yet. And for the most part, once we started having those conversations, things started getting much better. But unfortunately, a couple of days had gone by at that point, and some of that stuff had already occurred. And there's nothing worse for a city manager to be hearing stuff from other cities or other electeds that they don't know about themselves. That concept of no surprises to your city managers, your highest official in your city government that I work for. Those are my bosses outside of OCFA, direct bosses, but that's what I work for in these cities. Man, I got to do my best to support them. And that is trying to control those electeds and making sure they're not saying things that affect what they're doing in cities as well.
one of the fascinating aspects of this was you had multiple communities affected. And so you had mayors, city managers, kind of doing their own levels of communications for their communities. And I'm just curious, from your perches as IC, did you have visibility into what the mayors were doing and, the websites and some of that things that were going on and anything, um, that you would have hoped could have been done differently, perhaps?
Unfortunately, we had nothing, no involvement in what they were doing once they left the incident command posts and at their city halls and elsewhere, or what some of them put out on social media. It was more a reactive posture, like, oh, did you see this? Okay, okay, that's okay, or oh boy, we got to get ahead of this and
Mhm.
correct. So we had a little bit of both on that, and I had nothing from a proactive space.
Okay. Well, it was fascinating. I mostly paid attention to Garden Grove and what elected officials there were doing, and they made a really strong effort at making their website, a fit for purpose, all information type site. And they did, I thought, a pretty good job of that. And the mayor was out and visible and talking to her constituents there. I'm not sure Chief, that a private citizen there in Garden Grove put up a crisis website. A young gentleman named Victor Tran, he's a programmer and he saw a need and he did that. Are you by chance familiar with what he did there?
I haven't looked it up, but I did. Your podcast was sent to me early on when you kind of reviewed the incident and what we did well, and a couple things that we can improve on, and that website being one of them. Our incident management team has a website, and so we wouldn't need to develop it on the fly, but I like that idea of of using something like that. We have a template here, and that's a takeaway from us is to evaluate our ability to stand up something like that and have that robust single point of contact information to get everything related to the incident. Because I think there were silos of that around the community, both in a private aspect as well as the public aspect, public service aspect, whether it's city or county, that we could have collectively put it into a single point like he did. He did a great job from everything I've heard about it. I haven't personally seen it, but that's certainly a model idea. And you did make a comment also about the subtitles and things like that, that we could have done sooner in the multiple languages. I don't know if you've seen, but apparently I am extremely fluent in Vietnamese. Someone used an AI portal to it learned my voice, it learned my mannerisms, and had me speaking fluent Vietnamese in my voice with my mouth moving to it and everything. AI is out there. There's some incredible capabilities with it. We're evaluating, having some contracts with that type of thing that we can send it out in multiple languages. Orange County is a very diverse community.
Mm-hmm.
Both English and Spanish are our primary ones, but we have a large Middle Eastern contingent. We have a large Asian contingent. We even have Russians, that a large contingent that live in here. So being able to quickly disseminate in multiple languages using AI is a force multiplier that I think we're going to embrace as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I gave kudos to your PIO team for that and for getting it out in multiple languages. Yeah, the challenge is doing that from the beginning, right? Getting everything up and running quickly so that you can do that. And, that's an opportunity for personal growth for most incident management teams. And the technology just keeps moving so fast to do that, right? It used to be Google Translate would do it. Now you've got AI tools that can help you. It's fascinating and it's fast moving and rapidly changing. Hey, Chief, that AI video of you speaking fluent Vietnamese, was it using the messages that you had delivered in one of your on-camera updates?
Exactly. It was one of my regular ones, and I get it. All of a sudden, I get this thing sent to me from one of my city managers, and they're playing it in their city EOC that they had opened up. And everybody's laughing because they know I don't speak Vietnamese, and they're like, "What in the world is this?" So I needlessly shared that with my family, and we got a pretty good chuckle out of it. But I mean, people are commenting that literally, how does this guy speak Vietnamese so well? I certainly don't look like someone
Yeah.
that should speak Vietnamese that well.
Okay. Well, that is fascinating and terrifying at the same
Correct.
time, right?
100%.
Because that could is just as easily have been misinformation coming out of your mouth in Vietnamese. And yeah, that's the scary thing as PIOs trying to keep ahead of this stuff. And, those deep fake videos are coming. And if somebody's trolling a response, in the middle of something like this, you could easily throw something like that out there just to, sort of drop a hand grenade in the middle of things, just to mess with people. I'm so happy that didn't happen to your team after everything you guys went through and all the time and energy, particularly for this recent GKN incident. Um, Chief, on just back on the website issue, real quickly. I worked for BP most of my career, the British oil and gas company. And the last several years, I was in charge of crisis communications and crisis websites and having dark sites up and ready to go for an incident that might happen anywhere in the world. And, being ready to launch those websites when something goes wrong. So there is some pretty cool technologies out there that will allow you to do that and take inquiries on those sites now. For the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico back in 2010, we stood up 5 different crisis websites, the master site that the response used, and then one for each of the impacted states, or at least 4 of the 5 states. So we were looking after 5 different websites during that incident. And the thing was, each one covered one state. So we dedicated some of our responders in that state to managing that site. And of course, each site could take inquiries from the general public. And so they were responsible for engaging with the communities and dealing with the inquiries that were coming in. But we were able to, sort of parse that out on a state by state level, so that your central PIO team wasn't trying to manage all of that, from New Orleans. So some fascinating technologies out there, and but I was just tickled to see this young man create that website, and I'm like, he's really good, and he did the community a service by everything he pulled together there.
That's fantastic.
Uh, Chief, as you think back over your career, you've worked, many, many different incidents. What kind of advice do you have for up and coming incident commanders, people who are training to fill your shoes? Because there's so many aspects to being a good incident commander, and being able to manage people, being able to manage elected officials, people with differing agendas all come together to try and solve this thing. What's your sort of general advice for other up and coming team members?
Just remember what we're all here, what we all swore to do, right? And that's to serve the public. Whatever your role you have now, if you get up to a senior chief officer, battalion chief, division chief, or higher, don't forget our purpose. It is obviously to take care of our members, train them, keep them safe, all the things with that, but it's also to serve the public. And think about that. And if you were not a first responder, they don't have the knowledge that we have, and don't assume that's the case. And just share with them in a language they understand. Don't be all technical and fire service jargon, or whatever your profession is jargon. Share with them, keep it simple, be as open and transparent as possible. They have the right to know. Never fall back on that. And good or bad, own it, share it, and communicate to them. Because if you don't, they're going to come up with their own narratives. And that's not right to the incident. It's not right to the impacted area. So I guess that would be my biggest thing with the generation that's coming up right now, and you're preparing for stuff like this. Go to the classes, get trained up on it, build reps, on smaller incidents. Don't be afraid to jump in front of it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. But learn from it and move forward. And at some point in time, you may or may not ever get being under a microscope like we were put on this one. But when you're ready, and you're not making it up at that time as it's the first time ever.
Terrific. And how about for, up and coming public information officers? You've, I'm sure, worked with a variety of PIOs throughout your career. As we all know, people have different skill sets, different strengths, and different roles. And so as you think about sort of your ideal public information officer, or, advice to somebody coming up to be a good PIO, what's your counsel to them?
Be that good filter, right? You're our subject matter expert. I'm not a PIO, never really was, other than the roadside and small incident or team related stuff. Be that person I can lean on and understand where this messaging needs to go, correct me when I'm wrong, encourage me when I'm right, make sure that we're doing the right thing for the service we're supposed to be providing. That filtering thing is a huge thing, of what's right and what's wrong, and correct or encourage both, but also set the expectations with the media. That's a machine that takes a lot of feeding and a lot of care and feeding, and we can't necessarily always meet that demand. Be willing to filter that demand, so that, our primary mission there is to mitigate the incident. the care and feeding of the media machine is a secondary in nature. It's almost 50-50, but really we're there to go fix this thing. So help out with setting expectations with the media as well and sharing that we hear you, we're going to provide for you, but let our folks run the incident as well. So I think that would be my biggest ask of a new PIO or a seasoned one, is to support both sides, right? Support the incident as well as the demands of the media, balance the two and make sure what we are putting out is the right message.
All right. Terrific advice there, Chief. Thanks so much. Chief, I think we'll wrap it up here. Unless there's any other stories that are just itching to share with us from your long experience in the fire service. Anything else?
I without getting into the whole, I've been there, done that, but I've had a very fortunate career of responding around the country. Lahaina, Puerto Rico, North Carolina. I've had a lot of opportunity to go around. Last year I was in Texas for the Guadalupe River floods, and all those collective experiences you build on and grow from and share out. I'm a big person, and I think we talked about early on before we started about paying it forward, paying it back. I had a lot of people teach me to become the experience that I have. And now it's my responsibility to share my experiences with the upcoming generations and mentor them and give them that opportunity and preparedness for it. So, I am so thankful of this career and being able to go out and help and do the things that I've done, whether it's putting out a house fire or finding someone that died in Texas in floods. I'm so appreciative of OCFA and the opportunities it's provided me, and it's been an incredible career. This is an incredible moment right now, being able to talk to you. I never would thought I'd be on some podcast talking about PIOs. So thank you for the respect you showed me to call me and ask me to do this. And hopefully some of the little nuggets I've been able to share and lesson learned from this incident will help somebody else down the road.
I'm sure they will, Chief. And, one of the things I'm struck by here as we close out, talking to you and then talking to your PIO, Greg Barta, is just the humility that I sense from your team there, that, people are focused on delivering results for the communities. And you don't get a sense of egos in the room and needing to manage egos to get this stuff accomplished. So I think that's just a fabulous testament to you and to your teams, that you come to it with that level of empathy, care, and concern for the communities that you serve. So thanks for that, Chief.
That's super nice of you to say that. Thank you. I do believe that's a huge culture that we bring in OCFA. I don't think we're unique to the fire service, but it's certainly something we strive for in this agency, is drop the patch, drop the ego, and remember what you're here for. So I appreciate that acknowledgement.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Leading in a Crisis podcast. Thanks for joining us. Hey, if you want to drop me a line, you can email me at tom@leadinginacrisis.com. And we will see you again soon for another episode. Take care.